Hey everybody. All right, so what is a key? Like, what's the relevance, and do I really need to know this? Well, the short answer is no, you don't. But like anything that you do, the more you know about the internal workings of something, or the foundation or the theory behind how things work, it makes it a little easier to learn. And not only that, as you are learning, it makes it easier to sort of improvise and find out things and experiment with things on your own. And that's the whole idea of this, okay? Now, we don't have to know this because the inner Google gives us all the information we need to play songs as beginners, right? It gives us the chords, the lyrics, the strumming pattern, tells us what key it's in. I mean, everything is done for us. So we really don't need this. In fact, I played 4 or 5 years before I truly understood the relevance of a key. Okay, so don't panic, but for those of you that want, because look, I always tell you that you can play without theory and you can carry on your guitar journey, go up that hill until one day you're going to run into a gate, and that gate will be locked. And in order to get through the gate, well, you're going to have to know some theory or a very sophisticated or advanced technique to get through that gate, because that's just the way it is. The farther we take something and the more we learn and the better we get, well, the more difficult and complicated things can be. And we have to keep on top of the knowledge. So we have to keep learning as we go. But we can stop at any time and have the knowledge of our chords and our songs, and we don't have to worry about, what's the fourth chord in the key of E, or, what's the root of D, or we don't have to know any of that stuff if we don't want to, right? All right, so I'm going to break it down as easy as possible. So let's look at a key. Now, a key is just a collection of 7 chords, the 7 chords, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. There's only 7 in the alphabet, right? All of the chords in a key are numbered. So in this case, in the key of C, C would be 1, D would be 2, 3 would be E, etc., right? The reason the 7 chords are in that key is because they all sound good when you play them in any order. That's the relevance. Because the chords in that key are all made up of the same 7 notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. But they're made up, depending on the chord, they take 3 different notes. So for example, to make up a C chord, I would take the note C, E, and G, right? But to make up an A chord, I would take the notes A, C, and E. C sharp, but it's a version of a C. You see, so we only take the 3 notes to make a chord, but they're all taken from the same 7 notes. So eventually, every chord in the key shares the same notes. So that means that every house in the neighborhood, everybody that lives in each house, they all play well together in different combinations. So let's think of it this way. A key is like a neighborhood. And in that neighborhood, there are 7 houses. And in those houses, there are a bunch of people that live in them. And all of those people get along not only in their own house, but in other people's houses within the neighborhood. They all play together. They all sound great together. That's the easiest way to look at it, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about more of the notes and the relevance in the last part of this video, okay? And that's going to be great for you note players and solo players and riff makers and people want to start implementing the scales that you've learned. So that'll be interesting. Stick around for that. Now, we have a neighborhood or a key, and we have those 7 chords in the key, or 7 houses in the neighborhood. Now, of those 7, okay, we have 3 of them are major chords or big houses in a neighborhood. 3 of them are minor chords or little houses in the neighborhood. And 1 of them is what we call a diminished chord. Well, that's that house at the end of the street that, well, they never cut their grass and you never see them and they're kind of weird. And well, quite frankly, your parents tell you to stay away from them because they're a little bit strange, okay? So that's the diminished chord or the diminished house. Now, the diminished chord is very rarely used in the kind of music that we're going to play and Google. Rock, classic rock, country, indie, pop music. We generally use the 6 chords in a key, right? The 3 majors and the 3 minors. So, let's take a look at the key of C, or the neighborhood of C. Now, of those chords I mentioned, and of those houses, I mentioned 3 of them are big or major and 3 of them are minor. But which ones? Okay, well, there is a formula. So the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord in each key, the 1, 4, or 5 house in each neighborhood are big, major, if you're talking about a major key, right? If you're talking, we'll talk about minor keys after, but if you're talking about the major keys, we'll have 1 is major, 4 is major, and 5 is major. So what does that mean? Okay, so that means that the 1, 4, and 5 house in the neighborhood are big, big houses, right? And in the chords, in the key of C, the 1 chord would be C, so it's C major. The 4 chord would be C, D, E, F. Well, that would be also a major, so it's an F major. If you want to play it like that, you're more than welcome. So we have C, we have the 4 is F, and we have the 5 is also a major, and it's a G, so it's a G major. So we have C, F, G. 1, 4, 5. So if someone says to you, hey Ray, we're playing in the key of C and it's a 1, 4, 5 chord progression. So then I know I'm playing C, C, D, E, F, F, and one more up is G. C, F, G, C, F, G. All right, so now we have numbers 2, numbers 3, and numbers 6. Those are minor. Those houses are small. Okay? So if we go through the key of C, or the neighborhood of C, the first house is a C major, big house. The second in the key of C would be a D. But because it's a 2 house, we can't play a D major, because it's not a big house, it's not a big chord, it's not a major chord. We got to play a D minor. So the second chord, or the second house in the key of C, is a D minor. And the third house would be an E, but it has also to be a minor because it's not a 1, 4, or 5 house, or 1, 4, or 5 chord. So it's an E minor, small house. And then we go to the 4th chord, which is an F, right? C, D, E, F, 4. And it's also a major because it's a 4. Okay, or we could play it like that. Then, of course, the G is the 5, and that's major. So we've got basically, and then we come to the 6, it's an A, right? After the G is an A, but it's a 6 chord, so it's a minor. So that gives us C, 1, D minor is 2, E minor is 3, F major is 4, G is 5, and A minor is 6. The last chord, in case you're wondering, would be a B diminished, right? Now, 3 minors, 3 majors, 3 big houses, 3 little houses. Now, I've already told you that these chords will all sound good together. Just like all those houses, they all know each other in the neighborhood and they all play well together. So I'm just going to rip through a few chords in any order of the 6, the 3 majors and the 3 minors, just to show you that there's no sourness, there's no bad chord, right? So we'll start on C. Now, that wasn't a song, it wasn't a pre-rehearsed thing, it was just, I played any of the 6 chords in any order. And they all, like, you could see there's something there. Now, if we were to choose them and put them in a certain order and really work at it, we could have ourselves a hit song. And that's how songs are written. That's it. Done. So remember, in any major key, right? the first chord is the same as the name of the key. So if it was D, then the chord number 1 would be D. And then you would just list them after that. D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Then you would take your 1, whichever that is. In this case, it would be D. Your 4, which would be D, E, F, G. And your 5 would be A. Those would be your major chords, or your big houses in the neighborhood. The 2, the 3, and the 6 would be your minor chords. So in this case, it would be E minor, F sharp minor would be your minor chords. Then you would have a B minor as your 6th chord. So 2, 3, and 6 would be minors. 1, 4, and 5 would be your major chord. Now, if you're in a minor key, then it's really quite simple, but it's a little different format. So what we do is we still have the first chord is the name of the key. So whatever minor key you're in, chord number 1 will be that chord. Then in this case, 1, 4, and 5 become the minor chords, whereas before they were the major chords. Now the major chords in this minor key are going to be number 3, 6, and 7. And that's because the diminished chord that, remember the house nobody goes to, and the diminished chord nobody plays, that's number 2 in a minor key. So once again, in a major key, 1, 4, 5 are your major chords, 2, 3, and 6 are your minor chords. In a minor key, 1, 4, 5 are your minor chords, 2 is your diminished, and 3, 6, and 7 are your major chords. All right, so just like keys or neighborhoods are made up of houses or chords, okay? So there are the 7 chords in the key. Well, there are also 7 notes in each chord scale. So what that means is if we are looking at the chord of C instead of the key of C, right? So we want to know what makes up a C chord. Well, notes make up a C, just like chords make up a key. Okay? See the rhyme there? All right, so what that means is we have 7 chords in the key of C. And in the chord of C, we have 3 notes, because that's what all the chord is 3 notes. But they come from the 7 notes of the C scale. So in this case, if we wanted to make a C major chord, we would use the notes of the C scale, but we would only use the first note, the third note, or what they call the major third, okay? And then we would use the 5th note, okay? So in this case, it would be the first note of the C chord would be the C note. We skip the second, which would be the D, and the third would be the E. And we skip the 4th, which is the F, and we take the 5th, which is the G. So we have a C, we have an E, and we have a G. Now, if we went to the D chord, and we wanted to know how do we make a D chord, well, we take the 7 notes, but this time D note would be 1, where last time C note was 1. So the D note becomes the first note, and then every note falls into place. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, 1 to 7. In this case, again, we need the 1, 3, and 5 to make a D chord. Okay, so if we look at a D chord on our fretboard, there's the D. So the first note would be a D, and it's right here on our ring finger. We skip the second note, which is E, and we play the third note, which is an F. Okay? In this case, it's an F sharp, and it's right here as part of the D. And then we skip the G, and we play an A, and it's right here. So the 3 notes of a D chord are D, F sharp, and A. Okay? Now, the third note, so in this case, the F sharp. If we wanted to make this a D minor chord, we have to flatten the third. And all that means is we take the third note, okay, which again, in this case is the F sharp. That's this note right here. And we flatten it, which means down towards the headstock 1 fret. So this note we now play here, but I can't do that with my fingers. So that means I have to change the fingering. So that's why we play our D major this way, and we play the D minor this way. Now when we look at it, these two notes are the same. We're just playing them with different fingers. And that allows us to play this note right here, which should be right there. So if this was a D major, I'd be playing it like that. But it's a minor, all right? That's called flattening the third. So we've taken the third, which was an F sharp, we flattened it down to an F. Now we have our D minor. Okay? Now these notes, they're the same 7 notes for every chord. Whether you want to find out a C, a D, a G, an E, an F, it doesn't matter. They're the same 7 notes. The only difference is the number of the notes will depend on what chord. So in an E chord, the E is the first note. In a C chord, the C is the first note. And we count 1 to 7 after that. We take our first, our third, and our fifth, whatever those notes are, and we make the chord. The major chord, 1, 3, and 5. First note of the scale, the major third of the scale, and the fifth of the scale. If we want to make a minor version of that chord, we take the first note of the scale, the flat third, which means we move that third note down 1 fret or half step, and then we take the fifth. So the first and fifth are always the same. It's the third note that determines whether it's a minor or a major chord. Okay? Now, if we have just the first and the fifth, okay, so for example, in G, we would have a G would be the first, okay? Now the third should be a B, and that's here, okay? The fourth would be C, and the fifth would be D. Well, if we just take the first and the fifth, and we eliminate that B, which is the third, right? G, B, D. So we eliminate the third. There's no third. Well, now we have a power chord, a G5 power chord. Now, power chords are not minor or major because they're missing the third, which is the note that determines if a chord is minor or major. So a power chord you could play if it's an A minor, B minor, D minor progression, you play an A, B, D power chord. If it's an A major, B major, D major chord progression, you play the same power chords, A, B, and D, because there's no third note that distinguishes them between minor or major. And that's it. It takes a little bit to figure out and get used to, but once you get it, that's it. There's nothing else. There's no other trick. There's no other things, okay? Now, there are chords that are more complicated, like the sus chords and the seventh chords, and all that means is we are going to add another note or two from the same 7 notes that we've taken the first, the third, and the fifth from to make that major or minor chord. All right, I hope this helps. Look, as I've said, don't lose sleep like I used to do over this. I used to agonize over, oh my God, if I don't know this, then I can't play the guitar. That's just not true. You don't need to know any of this stuff, right? But I think you're going to find that once you start mastering your chords and you're playing, you're going to be looking, some of you, at what's next. Well, this is what's next. All right, so don't be intimidated. Feel free to ask me any questions that may have arisen from this video. Thank you for your ongoing support, and I will see you, well, at the next live. How's that? All right, remember, there's only one way to get better with your guitar. just play your guitar.